NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell round 25, and we're close to the end of the season here. I'm Longy. This is Biz. Mate, tough week for you last week. How you going?
Mate, it's been tough physically, mentally. It's just no Tedesco. Anti-potted him for the run home to make ground, and that's what happens sometimes. It was working for 3 weeks. It was miserable last week. Dropped a K of ranks, but hey, we go again this week. I'm excited. Otherwise, if it fails this week, I can start doing my NFL fantasy draft. So can't complain. How about you, Longy?
Man, it's brutal. I mean, look, NFL's coming up. It's coming up very soon, and it's a good thing. As a Ravens fan, I'm very excited about the season. But for me, bit of a rise this week. I jumped from about 980 to about 850, so it's slowly grinding upwards. I used two trades, two of my last four. So I bought Isaiah Katoa in for Isaiah Yo late in the piece, and Katoa wasn't great, but I mean, a 45 in a game where they copped an absolute pounding, I can live with that. I can live with that. So I'm not feeling too bad about it. But yeah, two trades left. No real injuries to deal with here. And we've got a bunch of guys to talk about now. And the first one here is Adam Doueihi. Biz, you're looking at some pods, you're anti-podding Tedesco, you're making some big moves. Is Adam Doueihi high on your list right now, and are you considering this one?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm making big moves backwards. That's the problem. But Adam Doueihi, yeah, look, he's been a great scorer at half. We spoke about him earlier in the year when he kind of tricked us into thinking he'd be the half when he was there for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know you fell for that, but hey, it hasn't stopped your season rolling along. But look, Doueihi, he's a guy that hogs the kick meters. He kicks the goals. He makes his tackles. He loves running the ball. It's like a 5'8" fullback and half in a combination, and he's a guy that averages about 60 when playing in the halves. And, their buy is now done. We saw, the question was playing next to a guy like Luai, who's doing the kick meters. Well, we have a one-game sample size where Doueihi kicked for about 600 and Luai kicked for about 50. So based on that alone, it's pretty comprehensive reading. And Tigers are on the way up. They've got a pretty soft draw, 10 to year, I believe. And that means goals. That means attacking stats. And, I wouldn't expect those huge scores from him every week. Like he did have a 100-meter intercept try and whatnot. But we saw that Doueihi was scoring really well out of center a couple of weeks ago. So he's in a bit of fantasy form. Coming back to your question, am I considering it? Out of this list, I do think that he is the most interesting to me because with Munster, we'll talk about Munster and we'll talk about the other guys, but there's some more question marks around the rest. Whereas I think with the season only a few weeks left, I think Doueihi keeps the 7th spot. They clearly don't think Latu's ready for that 7th spot yet, and he's a pod, so I like it.
Yeah, mega pod. A lot of people aren't buying a center right now as well. Me don't have trades too. So yeah, if he keeps that half spot, if he stays fit, if he plays next to Luai, it's a pretty much guaranteed 60 average. So I'm with you there. The one thing I'll shout out is Luai had, I think it was 42 run meters and 43 kick meters or something like that. And you mentioned the kick meters there, but the run meters is what sort of really jumps out at me because Doueihi dominated on the ground in terms of running. He dominated creatively. He was allowed a voice, I thought, in that game as well, and he was the dominant kicker. So it's just a bit strange to me to see Luai sort of stepping into the Latu Fino role that kind of got him dropped from the team. I'm not expecting Luai to play that passively going forward. So I think Luai might take back a bit of that role off Adam Doueihi, but there's just so much gravy in his game, like in his running game in particular, and with the attack the Tigers are playing right now, that I think the upside is just so much higher than the risk there. So bang an option. If you're making a buy this week, if you're buying a guy under 700K, I mean, Adam Doueihi's a cracking option. But then you look at him, you compare him, we'll talk about Munster in a sec, but even, Isaiah Katoa, who I grabbed last week, he's 705K. So it's an 18K difference there. We know what Isaiah Katoa is, whereas Adam Doueihi is kind of competing for that Isaiah Katoa level with a few caveats, with a few risks, that kind of thing. So I think Doueihi's only really valuable to you if he's not going to be like your 4th center, right? So if he's going to be your 3rd or your 2nd center there, and he's going to be one of the guys that you really rely on at center every week, great option there. But if you've got a bunch of guys already that cover center, I don't think you have to tear your team apart to get him unless you're really excited about the upside because he does have that nuclear upside. Now, next guy here, Cam Munster, a bit of an alternative. And there's pluses and minuses to this, Biz. So I'm going to crack one open, just a Coca-Cola at this stage. Still no beer sponsor for the channel, but cracking one open for Cam Munster. Back-to-back 60-plus games, and everyone's jumping on now. And I remember you laughed at me 3 weeks ago when I included him in the holds.
I was a
There was only
catalyst for this
3 of
movement.
us.
If
Only
I
three
didn't
of us in
laugh
the
at
top
you,
1,000 who had him. Well, look at us now. We've multiplied. There are 30 of us at least. But go on,
Mate,
give me a theory. You were the
you you
catalyst, eh?
you owe me because I laughed so hard about it. The fantasy gods decided to curse me and gift you, man. Like if I just left that alone and didn't say anything, he would still be plodding away to a mid-40s score most weeks. That week, Hughes went down. They're like gave Munster the keys. Man, you owe me for this one, huh?
Well, I'll thank you for that because the fantasy gods have been cursing you lately. But
I know.
yeah,
It's literally flipped since that week. Anyway, I learned my lesson. But
yeah,
hey, I mean, I'll let you talk about the pros of Munster. I'll go on with the cons. But we hyped him up last week. Um,
Mm.
the question mark only for me was Wishart took a lot more of the kicking last week
yeah, big time.
versus the first week. But who knows? Maybe it changes week to week. Munster's still getting a lot of ball, so he could get a lot of attacking options. But hey, are you super excited to be owning him as a well? I don't know how long he'll be a pod. I assume he'll stay a pod for the rest of the season just because most people are running
Yeah.
out of trades. But damn, he's looking good.
Yeah, mate, I'm pumped about it. So I built a little pod team. We did a little thing in Discord where everyone built a team. Everyone had to be under 12% owned. And Munster's in that team for me as well. So even with a fresh team, he's a guy I'm picking. But at that price, yeah, with the upside and attack as well, we haven't seen that big breakout attacking game recently too. Last week, you mentioned lower kick meters there, but 125 run meters. If he's running the ball that much, things are going to happen. I just think this one's guaranteed to be successful. And if he gets one of those big games, one of those games where he scores a try, makes a bust, has a try assist, all that sort of thing, he gets that 80, 85, that 90, that average could bump up to 70 for the run home because we're talking about, a 4-week window, right? Or a 6-week window since, Hughes went down, but a small window of time where the averages just can be completely different. And in head-to-head matchups, he's a cracker of a pod for me right now. So if you do need an option, for your bench, most people don't need a half, but if you need a scorer on your bench at 654K, he's a cracker. Now, Ben Hunt's the next guy here. And Biz, you've been playing fantasy a long time, probably about as long as Ben Hunt's been playing footy. So I guess you've probably seen. Actually, do you remember back when he cracked onto the scene?
Yeah, was
Yeah.
Ben Hunt was his first season the season you won it, or the season before that?
I thought it was the season after.
After, okay, it was
20, I
around
think it was
then. Yeah,
2014 from
yeah,
memory.
maybe. Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I do remember because he came on. It was a 320 to 350K half. He scored 35 in the first week. I didn't get him, and I thought I was
Mm.
so clever because 35 was so. But then he went on to average about 65 the rest of the year. Everyone kept falling for his dummies, and he just kept scoring tries and making line breaks. Well, look, this Broncos team is now going to be his. Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam going down. He's got the keys.
Yeah.
He could be getting bulk kick meters. He's going to be touching the ball a lot more. He's no longer the supporting half or hooker. We've seen that when he's the dominant half, he can average 50, 55 plus. In a Broncos team is pretty solid. They're obviously going to downgrade with their two key halves out of the game, but they've got players still. They've got Haas and Carrigan leading the engine room. They've got some good strike weapons. They've got Reece Walsh at the back. Reece Walsh could get a big boost from this. Reece Walsh is going to kick goals now. He's also going to get maybe 100, 200 kick meters more. All of a sudden, Reece Walsh could be a buy in this week's list. So, I do like it for Ben Hunt. The weird thing with Ben Hunt is I'm definitely taking Munster and Doueihi over Ben Hunt. But look at this price, 449K. Yeah. So if you've got your guns are all playing and there's no one to sell, and we'll get to our sells list, but your sellers are someone like a Latrell, well then financial to Ben Hunt can be done in one trade for most people, or at least quite a few people. And that is a compelling trade alternative, given that you could expect a 50 to 55 average in the run home with some upside, but also with its risks for the last 3 weeks.
Mate, agree with you completely. The only issue is the hamstring curse of Broncos halves. But I'll shout out Billy Walters. He averages under 100 kick meters a game as a starting 5/8 in the NRL. So he's not a kicking factor. If Josh Rogers or Jock Madden were to come in, because they're on the extended bench, that's much worse for Ben Hunt. But next to Walters, I've got no concerns whatsoever. So I think he's a stud option. And you throw in the fact that he's that 50 guy at St. George, where he's kind of carrying. This is him playing at the Broncos with all the weapons they have on the edges and one of the best middle forward rotations in the comp. So, yeah, you could see some big attacking days from Ben Hunt down the stretch here. And if I had 10 trades, I don't, but if I had 10 trades, I'd be buying Ben Hunt in a heartbeat here. Now, we ripped through to a couple of options here that I more want to talk about today, Biz, than recommend buying. And the first one's Latrell Mitchell. I want to lay out the lay of the land here to you, and I want to get your thoughts on whether this is an option people should be jumping on. So Trell Mitt killed it last week, 57 points. He got 2 try savers and 2 forced turnovers. So 18 points from those big defensive plays. Without those, it's a 39-point game. So not ideal versus the Titans there. You throw in the fact he had no kick meters last week, and you've got Cody Walker on the extended bench and Latrell named in the center spot. Now, if Cody Walker comes in, Humphreys is at half. Does Jai Gray get dropped back to the bench to make space for Latrell? Probably not. You've also got Ewan Aitken, who's out till probably next week as well. So that forces Talis Duncan into the back row. So I would say that, with a bit of confidence, Latrell, he should be playing in the spine, but he probably stays at center this week. Probably. If he was to stay at center this week up against Parramatta Biz, would you be jumping on at 748k, or do you think that center spot is just not appealing enough?
I don't think so. I don't think it's appealing enough for me. I think there's big games in him. He's going to have some explosive. The thing is, with my last couple of trades at 750k, I just think there's better options because he's got the buy left as well, right? So, if there was no buy, I'd consider it more thoughtfully, just given that he's a bit of a pod. But I agree with all your analysis. I think he just stays in the centers for the rest of the year. Just the Souths have too many injuries to cover, and he's there. I do think, though, the signs are bad in terms of Humphreys dominating the kick meters and still kicking the goals. So quad might not be 100%. That didn't help Humphreys get a good score, unfortunately, which is why I'm languishing right now. But I think Trell Mitt, unless you really need someone at the back there, I think there's better options. Like, I would personally take Reece Walsh over Latrell right now, just given on the dynamics. Like, if this was 2 fullbacks playing at the fullback spot, full strength teams, no way. But just the way the season's shaken out with Latrell's got a bye left. Walsh will get the goal kicking, etc. Latrell might not get the goal kicking back. So I'm happily skipping Trell, but it's good you include him because it's worth conversing about, because there's a chance he could just bury Parramatta for 3 tries and score 100
he's
anyway.
A big question, man. He's a big question. At this point of the year, we're just putting guys in who we want to talk about. Yep. But if he was named to start at fullback, let's say that came through, that was guaranteed, and that was a permanent thing, not covering injury. Also, he was named a goal kick.
Yep.
Are you flipping on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was waiting on it last week. I ended up like you going Isaiah Cattell, but I was just waiting to hear where Latrell was playing. And if they said he was playing fullback and I thought he would kick goals, I would have got Latrell 100%. But the center conversation without goals, without the bulk kicking is a bit of a different proposition. But no, 100%. If they came out and said, hey, Trell's actually going to be a late change to fullback and he's going to get the goals back, then yeah, I'll get him this week just as a pod and a bit of excitement.
Yeah, in that scenario, not a must-have, but very, very enticing option with good fixtures coming up as well. Yep. Now, Big Tino, last one here, 563k. I just want to mention him as well because he's named at lock this week. You've kept Tino, haven't you?
Yeah, I've held on to him. I just thought that I'd rather trade.
Looking smart now.
Yeah, I mean, if he plays, it's good. I don't know how long he'll play. It sounds like he's leaving the Titans as well, so I don't think they have an incentive to. Well, arguably, they don't have an incentive to play him for 60, 70 minutes. But on the flip side, if he's leaving the Titans anyway, they don't have any incentive to preserve him. So chuck him out there for 70 as well. So I'm hoping it's the latter and he gets some big minutes and he stays healthy. But look, I would personally wouldn't be buying him this week. I'd wait a week unless you really needed someone. But we haven't seen Tino healthy for a while. So it's a big risk to jump on a guy like that. And then it could be a late pull out or he plays 30 minutes. So he's worth talking about just simply because we know he can be a 60-plus guy and he's at that mid-500s. But he's one to watch for mine.
Yeah, more a shout out for the people who kept him, right? And more buy for next week. So if he comes out and kills it this week, he's got a very high break even. It'd be a nice price point. That could be appealing next week if you're desperate as well. Now let's get ripping through. And we're going to pods. Actually, we'll go cheapies quickly and then we'll go pods. So, and by the way, guys, this week sort of downgraded the production a bit just because I'm off on camp at the moment. And we're coming to the end of the year, right? So we'll take it easy. But cheapies here, Biz, bit of fun to be had. I know you'll want to talk about Jake Arthur. Obviously, we've got Tyron Wishart there as well. Cody Walker's in, Buchanan and Vitano. Now, Wishart's the first one here. He cracked out that 70-plus score. we have been rambling on and on about this and how he's got that ability, he's got that running game, it's going to pop out. What I didn't expect was the even share of kicking in that game. So that really bumped him up a little bit. But regardless, Wishart's that guy who we said he's going to have a couple of 70-plus point games where he goes big for you and you loophole him in. That was one of them. He plays first game of the round yet again. I think it's the third week in a row. And he's a great loophole option. If you need a guy this week, if you're loaded up with Canberra players, 4 or 8K, it's still a great price point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this will be the third week in a row where we're going to say he's perfect. He's like a mid or a boomer. He's not boom or bust, but he's boom or mid. And the 2 weeks he's starting is what, 37 and 75. So exactly what you said. So I don't think we need to spend much time on that. Again, great loop option. Jake Arthur, I didn't think would ever feature him on the show, but 2 decent scores this year when he's been on the field for long enough. A 50 plus last week. This is really, I don't know what kind of coach buys him. I think at this point of the year, you're not getting Jake Arthur to play him. It's more of a, I don't know. Is it a meme buy? What is it, Long?
It's more of a nostalgia call, man.
Yeah, nostalgia call. Like a Parramatta Grand Finalist, 2022 try scorer. Yeah, look, I don't know in what situation you'd be buying Jake Arthur, but if you buy Jake Arthur, put him in the comments below. We'll shout you out or something. But we might be putting. I mean, Knights fans, like, what is going on over there? But hey, we'll get to the exciting night at the bottom. But I personally wouldn't be buying Jake Arthur.
Yeah.
Hell, I wouldn't be buying anyone on this list except maybe Connor Vitano and Tyron Wishart. But he could be a fun option. He does kick and he does tackle and he runs the ball. So he's not a bad fantasy player. It's just I don't know if he's going to be the upside enough to worth a trade this funny year.
Yeah, I'll just shout out 500 kick meters is his average in 2 starts this year. Not getting 80 minutes across both of them as well. But I just think it's tough when you buy a guy who, they're not really benefiting the team necessarily. So he played that dominant role, but they got smashed by Penrith. And I look at that and I go, yeah, I doubt he holds that role when they have options there. But are they going to have options?
Yeah, revenge game versus Parramatta last week of the season.
Do you think?
Could be 100+ score?
Look, he scored a revenge try in that grand final in the last sort of 5 minutes there. So maybe it's probably more of a draft play. Like if you're desperate in a draft league, or if you're a Para fan that you just want to take the piss a bit now, 353K, he could potentially score well. I see some quieter scores as well. Cody Walker, 322K. This one's more to shout out. He's on the extended bench there. So again, if you're in a draft league, something like that, if you're at Cody Walker, some of you guys have Cody, I've seen. So if you have him in your team, you might actually get some games out of him. So we'll see if he can rock up this week. Then it's sort of a coin toss on whether he lasts the game. It's been a really tough year for him injury-wise. But if he comes back, the other thing I want to shout out here, and it doesn't work with the format of the show, but Tallis Duncan gets a big boost if Cody Walker plays. So when Cody plays, like Tallis Duncan's attacking stats next to Cody, crazy. Like Cody was feeding him, and Tallis is a great line runner. So I see a boost for Tallis Duncan if Cody can get fit for this game. But without Cody Walker, I mean, you're not going to buy Cody, right? But without Cody, I wouldn't really trust Tallis Duncan to be a 50-plus guy either.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add there?
Say, no, other than imagine how good the Souths could have been this year, just with Cody Walker, Duncan, Cam Murray, like Campbell Graham. Like next year, touch wood they stay healthy, because they could be a lot of fun, especially because they've had a chance to let these rookies run right a bit this year. So I think short term, obviously painful for the Souths fans, but hang in there, Souths fans. I think long term, this chance to give the youngsters a go is better long term for you over the next 2-3 years, because I reckon they'll be, if fully fit next year, a real tough team to beat.
No, I'll pay that. Kolomatangi as well. Munro coming good. Like, yeah, they got a lot of options there. Hayden Buchanan, quick one. St. George playing at centre. Had a nice try in that game. Had a try assist to Gutho. Both players were combining with Gutho as well, which is a nice place to be. 261K. Scored a 48. Was pretty attacking stat reliant. So I don't think he's the best fantasy scorer. But if you're desperate for a centre at a cheap price and you believe in St. George, could be an option you go for. And then, unless you have something to say about Buchanan there, Biz, Connor Vitano comes in. He's like a 28 average in reserve grade. Comes into that Newcastle fullback spot. I think he's like the 25th player to run that jersey this year. Does he hit and stick here? Is he David Armstrong 2.0? Is he one of those guys, do you think? Or is it just a footnote in history?
I think it's just really bumping up his price for next year. But I think he's. We've seen what these 28 reserve grade guys end up doing, like Jalen DeGrot, etc. But I think skip at this point of year. I mean, if it was
Was
10 weeks
Jalen
ago during
DeGrot
the
an
buys,
intentional joke there? Or
yeah, it was. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Jalen, if you're watching this. I had to, but it's just fantasy alone.
Yeah.
Hey, really, really nicely played last week. But look, just those guys who just are not fantasy guys. Like better in real life than their fantasy score suggests. I suspect Vitano will be one of them. But on the flip side, he's so young that he might develop that kind of consistent statistical backing over time.
Yeah. Sub 100 meters a game type of guy, though. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Just not giving yourself the opportunities at fullback. So, yep, I'm going to leave this one and let it fly through. Now, ripping into pods here. This is a pretty unhinged list, Biz, and I apologize in advance for anyone who plays very serious fantasy. You're probably rolling your eyes at this, but the big plays here are just guys that have value, right? So you're potentially someone who also Cherry Evans, by the way, is not $573. He's $573K. But but you're probably a coach who, you're a bit short of buying those big dogs there. I look at Cherry Evans, and he had a stinker again last week. He scored 29 points. He's dropped even more cash. I just look at their fixtures, man. I just look at their fixtures coming up, and they got Tigers this week. That's going to be a very fun, open game. Turbo's back at fullback. Leah Whitey's back on the wing. There's every chance that we see Cherry Evans get hot one last time at the Sea Eagles before he finishes up. If you were to assign a percentage chance on this, Biz, what do you think the odds are that he gets super hot for this last 4 weeks?
I reckon there's at least 180 plus scoring him at
Yeah.
over a 60% chance in the
Damn.
last 4 weeks. I just think Cherry Evans to me seems like the guy in his swan song game for Manly will touch the ball a million times and run the ball every play and just do everything. I genuinely think that he could be in for a big game, and he does have a good run of fixtures. We've had a lot of halves on the buys list, but Cherry Evans is one that we've seen. He's the guy that not only scores 90, but he can chain a few big scores together. Like once he gets hot, he can usually do 2 or 3 big ones back to back. And with this fixture list, and how desperate Manly are for wins, it could be the time. So I don't mind a 1-bet is good price.
Mate, super, super nuclear option. Like if I was in a head-to-head league where, maybe I was a player short. Like I was 2 players short this week. I have 1 trade left. And I'm looking to bring in a guy at this sort of price point. I'd be thinking about Cherry because, like you said, he's got that difference-making potential. He could also plot out a 25, but he's the high-risk, high-reward option on this list. And, he's done it before. It's also a bit of a nostalgia pick. Now, Brian Totter's up next, and he had 3 line breaks last week, a try. Big score there. We talked about him last week at 484K. He's another one who's in my pod team at the moment as well. So that team went pretty well, actually. But Brighton Toll, if you believe in Penrith down the stretch, and you think he's going to stay fit and play all the games, that's the big question there. But they're looking like they're fighting for a top 4 spot, so I think he will. He is a very fun pod, and he's a guy who, on balance of probability, probably averages about 50. But over a 4-week period, you throw in a few tries, some big attacking players like we saw last week, that could bump up to a 55, to a 60, to a 65. Or it could bump down to a 45 or a 40. It could go a bit lower as well. But that range of outcomes at that price is super appealing. And again, if you're a bit of an underdog, you're short on cash, I wouldn't be buying Brian Toll if I had 1 trade left and I was selling Herbie Farmworth. I wouldn't be banking the cash. But if you're selling, Latu Finu we talk about there, and you've got 140K in the bank, and you're looking for a wing fullback, he is one of the better options that you can go for, and a loopholeable option this week as well. Do you have any love here for Brian To'o, Biz, or do you think this one's just a bit too out there?
No, I mean, at this point of the year, I'm not even looking at prices. If I can afford them and they have a good run of fixtures and I think they can score really well, that's all that matters to me, right? So maybe that's why I suck right now. But, 502K, I think Tom Jenkins has been killing it on the other side. It'll eventually turn, and then To'o will get a run of games where he's scoring hat tricks. And when that happens, he'll score a couple of 60s, couple of 70s. And just like you said with Munster, you got to look at it in short windows. Yeah, To'o is not a 60 average player, but can he average 60 plus over 3-4 weeks? He can. Am I saying you should buy To'o? No, I'm just saying that's a potential upside for him. That's an outcome for him. Yeah. But I personally wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
Yeah, that's probably the skill, right? You're trying to pick those form runs for teams, for players, and the pod list. It's less about being right or wrong. It's more about giving yourself the chance to be lucky. That's how I view these, right? Like you're going different. You're picking guys who have that potential upside, and you're giving yourself a chance to be lucky. Because if you just go with the crowd, you don't give yourself that chance. So these are guys who can potentially do that. Now, Jermaine Hopgood, I'll throw this one to you because you're a fellow Para fan, and he played big minutes last game out. Obviously, Sam Tuiviti is now out injured. What do you think of Hopgood? Like that 60-plus game, I think it was 64 points in 65 minutes. Really good PPM. Minutes are up as well. Mostly based on defensive stats. Does he maintain this?
If you get 65 minutes, I don't see why not, because he got 40 tackles, 150, like 130 meters or so. Like no offloads really. So he's an offloader. So I don't really know if that was just part of the game plan to tuck it up and ruck it up.
Yep.
Like that's just maybe they said, Hoppy, it's time for you to stop making mistakes and just run the ball, because he's been very error prone this year. A lot of poor passes and drop balls and bad penalties. Maybe they just said get back to basics, tackle everything, and run the ball. So if that's the case, it probably caps his upside, but it probably keeps him on the field a lot longer as well. We see the same kind of forward pack that Parramatta rolled out last week with Luca Moretti at lock, and Hopgood at prop. Realistically, that's interchangeable. Like Moretti doesn't play big minutes. Moretti his longest stint is like 18 minutes. So I think again, Hopgood is in a good position for big minutes. And I think over the last 4 or 5 weeks when he's been playing prop, he does average in the low 50s. If he gets at 65 minutes most weeks, then he could be a mid-50s scorer. But again, I only consider it at his price point, because otherwise I would just get Carrigan for similar scoring, but at a more reliable profile, on the caveat that he costs 150k more. So if you're strapped for cash again, Hopwood is a good budget Carrigan who could deliver the same results at a much better price and a bit of a pod. And if he adds that offload back into his game, like we've seen, a 65-minute Hopgood can score 60 plus week in, week out. So there's the arguments for him.
Yep, fair shout. Dual position as well. That's a plus. But yeah, like you said, we talked about Carrigan a bunch the last couple of weeks. He is definitely the better option there. But if you're strapped for cash, Hoppy could be a go. Then Ruben Cotter, similar price point here. Wanted to shout him out. Scored 55 last week. Played at lock. When he plays at lock, he is that sort of 55-ish guy. Pretty more like a 54, 53. But at 565k, if you're a head-to-head coach only, so around 27 buy, obviously a dud. If you're a head-to-head coach and you're desperate for a middle forward this week, maybe you're someone who has Isaiah Yeo, Joey Tarpanay, these types of guys, and you just want to cover them rather than sell them. Cotter could be a guy here. He could be a guy, and he could easily pump out a nice little number for you and be a very stable option. Maybe as the other side of a loophole, right? So if you're running a Wishart loophole with Cotter, that's great because you're almost guaranteed, 45 to 50 plus every week out of that, and you're getting the upside of Wishart there. So 565k, decent option there. He has been shifted around a bit recently, but I think he's back to lock for the long term. So pretty easy play there. And then unless you want to talk about Cotter here, Biz, I'll just go jump to Talakai. Ramian is out for the season now. So Herodi comes in, Talakai's in. It pretty much locks Talakai in for the rest of the year. How desperate would you have to be to jump on Talakai at 409k? Because he's got some big games in him, and they have some good fixtures.
I would have to be extremely desperate. He's still got the buy left, and I would just be playing for fun at that point. I mean, I'm playing for fun now. In fact, I've been playing for fun for about 20 weeks. So that's the only situation I could think. If you're
a pure
big
desperation
fan,
I just reckon he could pop off though. I'm looking at their matchups.
He's got
no Ramian there. Could. I could see him really popping off. Like he hasn't done it in the last month. I just feel like one's coming for him. That's why I popped him in here
6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, when you needed.
Yeah.
He could get up to 600k, but at this point of year, probably it's not really relevant.
Yeah, probably a bit too desperate. All right, ripping into the holds here, and a lot of these are questions. So this week, there's questions, then the sells. You definitely don't want to miss the sells either, guys. But Garrick's the first one. Mate, this is easy. He goes back to center, and they are finally at that 4-week run of good fixtures that we've been talking about for a month. So Garrick's fixtures turn around. He's at that price. He plays center again. Leo Hopewadi comes in on the wing. This is a slam dunk. Like, if we had more trades, he'd be a buy right now. But if you've got him in your team, I'm getting a lot of questions from people about selling Garrick, that kind of thing. I wouldn't do it. Keep Garrick, hold him for the rest of the year. he's actually startable at this stage when he's playing at centre.
Yeah, agreed. Nothing to add.
All right, Fogarty, what do you reckon of this one? Because he's been a bit out of form recently, Biz. Like I think was it a 29 and then a 41 last two? Yeah.
Yeah, last two. The thing with Fog is the 3 weeks before that, he was pumping up mid 60s and doing really well. I think he's playing well enough to hold for sure. At this point of year, I think with a guy like Fog, nothing's changed. Raiders are playing well. He's going to have some big scores. So I think I'm holding Fog. Hosking and Tarpon are different for me because, unless you had something to add to Fogarty, I'm happy to keep skipping on.
Hey, cool. Yeah.
Hosking is different because he, to me, was doing really well at post Origin with a couple of 60s and a 70. But now he's gone back with Hudson Young fully fit to 65 minutes. And that to me is a high 40s, like 50 scorer. So at his price, missing this week, if you've got trades, like I've got, I think 4 trades left, maybe 3. If I had 4 trades left, I'm happy to. I'll have to check. I'll have to check this one, but I'm happily upgrading Hosking to someone in our buys or Carrigan, whatnot, just because I think his upside is now capped regardless. Although he has shown he can score pretty well in 65 minutes too, but he's kind of going along to 45, 46 point scores the last couple of weeks. And it's hard to tell if that's because it's just Hosking's kind of cooling down. But Hudson Young's also been scoring a bit weaker over those 2 weeks. So maybe it's just not edge games for Canberra. And then Joey Tarpon is an interesting one because he comes with a 67. We said don't, you just hold these guys like Adam Fanor-Blake and Tarpane. And 33 last week or so, or 35 or whatever he ended up with was not great. But he did play 50 minutes. And a 50-minute Tarpane is all that you really need for him to get to the 55 mark. So I'd be holding Tarpane, I'd be holding Fogarty, I'd be potentially selling Hosking, but also maybe not, because I still do think that having trades for the last week or two will be more useful than a slight upgrade this week. For example, I'll probably run a looper, like I'll play Galvin or Humphreys, and if one of them stink it up, then I'll trade Hosking to someone. But otherwise, I think it's definitely worth holding all of them. And then I'll leave Yo to go because I just I hogged it just then.
No, you nailed it. Yep. I guess the question I was going to ask was, what's your order there? But it sounds like Hosking's the one you'd sell. Tarpane's bloody frustrating. There's no doubt because he's got so much ability. But Isaiah Yo's the last one. 2 to 3 weeks is what sort of came out towards the back end of last week. So I made the call on the Thursday show that I would sell Yo at that point. Before that, it was sounding like 1 week and it wasn't confirmed. At that point, he was a hold, but it did pivot as the week went on. At this stage, 2 to 3 weeks, not even on the extended bench this week, so not in the race this week. He probably comes back next week, but what are the minutes like? We've seen them. They don't have Yo right now. We saw Isaiah Papali'i play 47 minutes in that lock roll. We've seen Lindsay Smith only play the 47 minutes as well. So it's not like other players are stretching to fill Yo's minutes there. They're playing minutes they can maintain when Yo comes back. That's the bit that makes me think he's going to come back and play 60, 65, 70 minutes. We don't know if he's going to be back next week or the week after, or even the week after that. Like, there's just no pressure on Penrith right now because all the teams around them have had historically bad luck. With like the Warriors losing their halfback, with the Broncos losing both their halves. Who else we got there? Cronulla just don't play footy every second week. It's a mess. It's a mess up there in that competition for the top 4. So Penrith are going to skate through, I think, and that means Isaiah is not facing that pressure. So I think he's pretty sellable. And if you're a head-to-head coach, he is a firm sell.
Yeah, you make great points. I was probably on the hold camp start of the show, and now that you've mentioned all that, maybe you're persuading me because I agree with that. I think even if he comes back, what are his minutes, right? And if for example, if I'm trading Hosking or Yo, at least I know Hosking's coming back next week, and unless he's injured, he's playing 65 odd minutes. Actually, now that I say that, I guess Matty Nicholson's around now, so I don't really know for sure. So that just added a can of worms to this conversation. But I think, the problem
maybe
with
Tarpane will get 20 minutes a game, and they'll make room for everyone else.
Yeah, that could happen as well. It could hurt Hosking and Tarpane and just kill my team further. But with Yo, I do think they'll bring him back towards the end of the season to give him match fitness ahead of finals. Like, I don't think they'll want to sit him for 4 or 5 weeks. Just to rest him, and then he's kind of dusty for week 1. But on the flip side, I don't think they need to stretch him playing 70, 80 minutes. Like, I truly think that if he comes back, it'll be a 50, 60-minute proposition. But
Hmm.
they've got I say that they've got a hard run of fixtures coming up. Like they've got the gauntlet now, whereas they've been playing for 8-9 weeks against the bottom 8. Like they've had like
Yeah.
8 bottom 8 fixtures in a row, and the only top 8 fixtures they had was in Origin. So this is the real test, and I think if they drop one, then against the Storm this week, if they drop that, there's a bit more pressure. They might bring Yo straight back in next week. So, yeah, it's a tricky one because he gets locked out after the very first game.
Hmm.
But I do think that if Storm get a win, then Panthers will be like, all right, we've had an easy run of fixtures. We need to really get down and grind and show we can beat these top teams and build some confidence. So that's my counter argument on why I would hold Yo.
Valid. I mean, if they beat the Storm, though, that's
if they beat the Storm, then it's very different. I think they just ease him in, but there's less pressure. So it's really a coin toss on who wins tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I'm scarred from Toby Couchman as well. Like that's one thing that jumps into my head. Yeah.
Olakuatu as well, redoing a shoulder injury. We talked about it. Shoulders are, especially guys who make 50 tackles a game, like you're hitting your shoulder 50 times. If it's unstable, then if there's instability, then it's not easy. So it could be. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to think about it because I think maybe it is worth selling over Hosking.
I think with your 3 trades, it's probably worth selling. But yeah, is Hosking startable? Like, is Hosking's upside startability? And they're very similar in price. So I'd probably sell Hosking if I was you, just because Yo could potentially be valuable, whereas Hosking doesn't really have that in his bag. Now, let's turn to the sells here, and we've got a pretty extensive list to go through, Biz. So we've got don't waste your trades and Latu Finu at 374k.
You've been wanting to do this all week, seriously. You're really on this guy, huh?
Oh, he's killing me, man. He's killing me. Got 3 points in 34 minutes last game. But look, don't waste your trades. Let's go back to that for a sec. Don't be trading for nothing this week. So I kind of broke my rule a bit last week, but don't be trading a Raiders player, a Jamal Fogarty, because he's been a bit out of form, or a Tarpanow, one of these guys, for some other guy to avoid playing, someone who's not that much better, or that much worse, right? Like, don't just be trading for that little 5-point, 10-point upside there. Like, if you can field a strong 17, assume that Yo's out and all that sort of thing, don't be trading. Just hold off unless there's a guy who you think really improves your 17. So, I'm just really hammering that point because, for me, I sort of stretched that limit. I think it's probably worth me talking about it. I went Yo to Katoa last week, like I talked about there. I just think Katoa is a similar scorer to Yo. And there's that shoulder injury risk that we talked about. There's that timeout that we talked about. And I got to play Katoa over Galvin last week. Katoa only beat him by 10 points, but yeah, that was sort of a play that made sense to me. Biz, before we go into Latu Finu, do you want to mention anything on, I guess, what you're using to weigh up your trades here?
Just really whether the trade's more valuable to me this week for 10 points or if it's more valuable to me in week 26, 27 when it's probably worth 50, 60 points. Because I guarantee you, half your team will be missed. Last year, I'm pretty sure most people had 13 players in the last week.
Yeah.
So if you have 2 trades, then you're making 100 points on versus 5-10 points this week. So I expect that's going to happen. And guns are going down every week. This was a good week, touch wood. That no major injuries that I can think of, but I think that's more of a rarity. So yeah, don't waste your trades. Like, I've seen some crazy suggestions, like, should I trade Tedesco to Campbell? Well, look what happened if you had traded Tedesco. It just sideways, keeper to keep moves based on 1 or 2 low scores. If they're playing, if they're fit, don't trade them unless they're not playable. Like, if they're scoring 45 to 50 plus each week and you can bank on that, just keep them. A 45 is better than a 0. So I would just, don't waste your trades.
Bang on, man.
My dog's
and look
barking.
at your buyers
You
too.
can hear my dog barking. Yeah. She's saying the same thing. She's going, don't hold your trades, bro.
She's getting mad. She's getting fiery. But no, you're spot on. Look at your buys as well. That's the other thing. So if you have a lot of Cowboys, a lot of South Sydney players, a lot of Sharks, I have 2 Sharks, for example, then you especially need to be careful in those rounds because you could be cooked. And the other one is Latu Finu coming off the bench. I will say the Tigers bench is actually pretty favorable for middle forwards. So there is potential that he gets a bigger role off the bench and goes back to being that good middle forward and scoring 35 points. But we just haven't seen that recently. And I think if you're going to sell Latu, it's this week or never, because his price is going to drop quite a bit again. And by the next time that you're looking at selling him, he's just not going to be worth enough to justify a trade. So move Latu now, or don't move Latu at all, and only move Latu if you're moving him to someone who's going to make a difference in year 17. Caveat to that is if you're buying like Tyron Wishart or something like that, maybe you're a head-to-head coach and you really need to squeeze the points out this week, that's where a Tyron Wishart loophole might make sense for you. But other than that, if you're an overall coach, only do it if it impacts your 17. Biz, mate, thanks for jumping on.
Can I add one more question before we
go?
Just to keep extending because we love to talk. Would you do the same for Talon De Silva? Because I know he's at the bottom of most people's benches. Yep. He's only 251k. That's the problem. But if you've got 200k left over, would you move him to a Wishart? Because he's unplayable as well right now. Like he's not getting the minutes. He hasn't earned his starting spot. He had a shocker last week. If he's getting a Wishart and you had to play him, would you do the same thing? Is the same conversation?
Hypothetically, if I had Fogarty, Tapane, who's out for a week.
Yo, potentially. You're holding him.
Pappenhausen, maybe he's out for a week with a HIA. Yeah, something like that, right? Guys that I really want to hold. And then Talon De Silva. And I had that money and I could move Talon De Silva to Ben Hunt or something like that. That adds another keeper level guy. Yeah, in that scenario I would, but it's quite rare. Like you'd need to really have that perfect storm of problems there to move him. At 250k though, I'd probably rather just keep him on the end of the bench and try to move around the other pieces there.
Yeah, fair enough. Because as you were talking about Finder, I'm thinking, well, if I want to hold Hosking, if I want to hold Yo, if I want to hold Tarpanay, or I could potentially move Talon De Silva up to a Ben Hunt type or Wishart type guy, because I do have cash. So it's one to consider, and just because we need another sell. So, but I think I'll probably hold him.
It's depth, bro. It's massive depth. So not a bad shout, especially down the stretch, and you're getting those Camper Raiders buys out of the way. But look, man, thanks for jumping on, guys. We'll keep going through right till around 27. We'll hack it together a bit, but we'll have to get fantasy awards going soon too, Biz. Any early nominations from you for any awards this year?
Jack Bird, worst trade of the season.
Worst trade of the year, Jack Bird. I'll give myself Selwyn Cobbo, worst trade of the season.
Hey, you got a couple of scores though.
Yeah, you got that 55 the first game, but Carraz got a 97 or something that week. So it burned, man. It burned. But yeah, cheers for jumping on, man. I'll catch you next week, and good luck, everyone. Don't waste those trades. We'll see you guys there.